How's it going? Everybody out there in the Twitter sphere, hello. We're going to talk today about a couple of things. One is how to not bankrupt your futures. Save $47 trillion. Imagine that. Wouldn't you like to save $47 trillion? And we're going to talk about how to live to be very old and healthy, how to expand and increase the size of your brain and brain function, and we're going to also talk about how to shrink your belly for those of you who need that. Sound good? So we have a big problem. We have a very big problem, which is a $47 trillion problem. That's the amount we're going to spend over the next 20 years dealing with lifestyle-preventable chronic diseases like heart disease, diabetes, cancer. And it's a global problem. It's actually more money than the economy of the 6 largest economies combined. That's a lot of money. I don't even know what $1 trillion is. And it's all primarily caused by a condition that is almost never diagnosed. It's caused by what we call diabesity. Diabesity is a condition of imbalances in your blood sugar and insulin, all the way from a little bit of belly fat to full-blown type 2 diabetes. And it's the cause of pretty much everything. And 90% of people who have it have no idea. And it's a concern because 1 out of every 2 people has it. 1 out of every 2 Americans has this problem. But it's not just an American problem, it's a global problem. In fact, 80% of the world's diabetics are in the developing world. Number 1 is China. Number 2 is India. Middle East, 1 in 4 diabetic. It's a huge epidemic globally because we're not just exporting our technology and economic know-how to the developing world. We're exporting our toxic industrial food, our sugar and salt. In fact, there are only 3 countries, I think, that don't have Coca-Cola: Burma, North Korea, and I think Cuba. And now what used to be Burma is going to now have Coke, and they're actually learning how to introduce it there in very insidious ways. And they're going back to actually how they introduced it here 100 years ago. So the question I have for you is, do you have diabesity? How do you know? He has it. He says yes. So it's not hard to diagnose. How many of you have carb cravings and sugar cravings? Anybody? A couple of you, right? How many of you have a little extra belly fat? How many of you have maybe a family history of obesity or diabetes or early heart disease? Or maybe you have acne or depression or infertility or low sex drive. Or maybe you have high triglycerides or low HDL. Or maybe your doctor told you your blood sugar is a little high. All those factors can give you a clue that you might have diabesity. And if you have it, it's very important to know because it's the single biggest cause of aging and chronic illness. And it's very easy to fix. It's, in fact, 100% reversible if you know what to do and you know how to diagnose it. Now, the problem is most physicians have no idea what to do with this. The NIH is spending $800 million to research the cause of obesity. Now, I wish they'd give me that money because I could tell them what's causing it, right? It's what we're eating. It's the 29 pounds of French fries, the 23 pounds of pizza, 24 pounds of ice cream, 53 gallons of soda, 2.7 pounds of salt, 24 pounds of artificial sweeteners, 90,000 milligrams of caffeine, not to mention 10 pounds of food additives a year and almost the same amount of pesticides in our diet, and the 2,700 calories we're eating every day. That's what's causing this problem. We ate ourselves into this problem. We're going to have to eat ourselves out of it. And it's economically a crisis because basically right now 70% of our entire federal budget is for Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, and it's only getting worse. By the end of 2042, 100% of our budget will be for health care, leaving nothing else for roads, transportation, military, education, nothing. So it's not just affecting adults now, it's affecting kids. We have an increasing population of obese kids. In fact, 40% of kids are now overweight. 1 in 3 kids born today will have type 2 diabetes in their life. 1 in 3 kids born today will have type 2 diabetes in their lifetime, unless we do something about it. In fact, today, 1 in 4 teenagers has prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. 1 in 4, up from about 1 in 10 years ago. So in just that short time, we've gone from 1 in 10 to 1 in 4. And what's worse is that if you're skinny, you're not safe. 1/4 of all skinny adults have diabesity, and 37% of skinny kids have prediabetes. So even if you're thin, you're not safe. In fact, just because the junk food doesn't make them fat, it makes them sick. Right? Just because the food, I'm fine, I'm thin, you could be fat on the inside. It's called being a skinny fat person. So how do you reverse chronic disease? How do you do this? What's the solution? Well, if you listen to our medical profession, it's through better use of medication. Does it work? Well, Avandia is the #1 drug for type 2 diabetes. It's killed over 200,000 people from heart attacks since it was introduced. Not sounding like a good idea. What about statins? They prevent heart disease, right? But statins show that they increase the risk of type 2 diabetes dramatically by 48% in women who take them. It increases your risk of muscle damage. In fact, in a recent study, they found that people who were given statins and then exercised compared to people who were not given statins and got them to exercise, it erased the benefits of exercise. So if you work out for 12 weeks like crazy and you take a statin, you won't get any increase in fitness. And you'll see a 4.5% decrease in your energy production in your cells. So your metabolism slows down by 4.5%, whereas the group that exercised without the statin increased by 13%. It's a poison to the cells. And it's not a great drug. You have to treat 50 people to get one heart attack prevented. You have to treat 890 people with a statin to prevent one death. If you had a bladder infection, you came to me and I had to treat 50 people with antibiotics before I could fix one person with a bladder infection, that would be a very lousy drug. So basically, when you think about it, the drug that's supposed to prevent diabetes causes heart attacks. The drug that's supposed to cause heart attacks causes diabetes. What do you call that? I call that Pharmageddon, right? Not a good thing. Now, the reason we're in this dilemma is we're using 20th century tools like medicine and surgery to treat 21st century problems, which are lifestyle-related problems. It's like mopping up the floor while the sink's overflowing. And it's a foodborne problem. It's what we're eating. And we have to completely rethink our approach to medicine, completely rethink our approach to disease, rethink our approach to health. Current medicine is really about diagnosing diseases instead of the science of creating health. What I do is called functional medicine. It's a science of creating health. So then the question becomes, how do you create health? How do you change biology to create health? Wouldn't that be a good thing to know? Most of us in medical school never learned that. I'm a doctor, but I never learned how do you create a healthy human. Pretty amazing, right? Because I'm doing medicine, but I should learn how to do that. I never learned that. I learned how to diagnose diseases and find the right drug for the disease, the right pill for every ill, the right drug for every bug, right? So when I began to think about this, and I actually got very sick myself with chronic fatigue, I began to discover a new way of thinking about the body as a system, as an ecosystem, as an interconnected web of interactions that are all dynamically connected every moment. And it's the power of understanding these biological networks that's the future of healthcare. It's the future of actually how to treat chronic illness. I treat people and reverse conditions such as MS or autism or schizophrenia, diabetes, heart disease, autoimmune diseases, digestive problems, psoriasis, any disease that you can imagine that most people have a chronic illness other than being hit by a truck or an acute infection. This approach works to deal with. And it's called functional medicine. And we have a matrix that we use, and we look at the body as a series of systems that are interconnected. And that's where we spend our time, not at all the disease level. Because the disease level is really at the very end of a series of events. You want to know what's really happening upstream, not downstream. So we know how to change biology. But how do you change behavior? Because I can tell you what to do, but you might not do it. That was a really important question. Because if I knew what to do to create a healthy human, what if I couldn't get them to change? Then what's the point? In fact, most doctors write a prescription, 50% of people don't even fill it. So I began to think about how do you change behavior? And it's really through the power of social networks, through the power of community, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So then let's get back to how we reverse chronic disease and how we get people healthy. Because most people often don't know how bad they feel until they start feeling well. Most people don't know they have something wrong with them because they think it's normal to feel tired or sluggish or have brain fog or feel a little depressed or a little cognitively impaired, to have a little achy system. People think that's normal, but it's not normal. It's a sign that something's wrong. So the first question is, does food cause disease? And the answer, most people say yes. We know that if you eat too much, you get fat. If you have too much eggs, you get high cholesterol, which, by the way, isn't true. But these are sort of the things that we believe. And yet, most doctors don't think that food can cure disease. One cardiologist recently said, when we were talking about the idea that food was medicine, he said, well, if food was medicine, and that was true, then I would have learned that in medical school. Okay? So I call it the black box theory of medicine. Whatever you learned in medical school is in this black box, and that's true. And anything outside of that, if you weren't taught it, it wasn't true or not worth learning. Unfortunately, that's not the way it is. So food influences health and disease. We're going to talk about how. And food also is really important because it's an essential feature through which you can change your biology with the most effectiveness and the most speed. So how do you create resilience in the body? Don't we want to be resilient and vibrant and healthy? That's really what we want to know how to do. And it's really through this new drug. This new drug actually is a special drug because it can improve the function of thousands of genes and the expression of thousands of genes. It can beneficially affect dozens of hormones. It can optimize tens of thousands of protein networks. It does it faster, better, and cheaper than any drug ever discovered with no side effects. It's available to almost everyone on the planet. You know what it is? It's food. It's not like a drug. It is a drug. And the things in food are more powerful than any pharmaceutical ever devised. And it's like code. It's like information. It's not calories only. Food is calories, yes, but it's also got informational molecules, instructions that literally speak to your genes with every single bite. Every time you put something on your fork and you put it in your body, you're sending a message. Now, what are you sending? Messages of health or disease? Depends on what you put on the end of your fork. This is called nutrigenomics, which is the science of how food influences our genes, but it's even more than our genes. And the Pima Indians are a great example of how food was a catalyst for them to become very sick. In one generation, they went from being thin and fit, living in the desert, to being the second most obese population in the world, 80% of diabetes by the time they're 30. But the opposite's also true. These are the Aborigines in Australia who were taken to the outback by a nutritionist after having developed diabetes and obesity and heart disease on multiple medications, and they still remembered how to hunt and gather. So they took them to the outback in a big truck, and they let them loose, and they were eating alligator and cactus and, I mean, whatever they ate out there. I don't know, in the outback. And 7 weeks later, they picked them up, did all their blood tests. They'd all lost weight. They'd gotten completely normal biomarkers. All their blood tests went to normal. All their diseases went away. Their diabetes or high blood pressure or high cholesterol, gone in 7 weeks. There is no drug on the planet that can do that. But eating real food can do that. Then this is what happened to George. He came to see me, 63 years old. He said, "Can you help me?" I said, "Yes, but you have to do everything I say." And he had every kind of problem you can imagine. He had angina, heart failure, diabetes, reflux, prostate problems, sinus problems. He had low testosterone, low sex drive. I mean, you name it, he had it, right? He had a whole list of problems, which is why I call myself a holistic doctor, because I take care of people with a whole list of problems. And they're all connected, right? They're not separate problems. And it was, instead of treating all these diseases separately, I treated his system. Just like this is looks like a fish, this looks like an estuary. This is actually a fish farm in Spain. And in this farm, they hired an ecologist to create a healthy ecosystem, and the byproduct of a healthy ecosystem was vibrant, healthy, clean fish with lots of omega-3 fats and no toxins. In the same way, by treating the system, by creating a healthy human being, by taking out the bad stuff, putting in the good stuff, and creating a healthy biological ecosystem, health just happens. It's automatic. You don't actually have to treat the diseases. So what we did for him was ridiculously simple. We treated his system, not the symptoms, right? And we gave him real food, and we gave him a little movement. We got him on a low-sugar diet, low-glycemic diet, lots of phytonutrients, lots of fiber. We got him on some basic multivitamins and nutrients to help regulate his blood sugar and fix deficiencies. We got him exercising. We gave him a lot of support. And within a year, he lost 155 pounds. He went from having all these conditions and all these medications to having nothing. He was healthier, and now he's 69. He's healthier than he was ever in his life, and he's so excited and healthy, he's starting a bathhouse in New Mexico. He's moving from Queens. So you have to treat the root cause and not just the symptoms. And it's really about how environment affects your health. Most people think that it's genetic, that you have chronic disease and genetic, but 95% of what we see as disease today is caused by the environment affecting our genes. It's not genetic. So who here has a human body, right? Probably most of you, right? This is a few aliens in the room. Could be X-Men or something. But how do you care for your human body? It's a simple question. It's not that hard. We're going to learn how very quickly. And all these things I've written about, they're all available on my website and my books. I encourage you to sort of dig deeper. But it's really about what you put on your fork. Because what you put on your fork is way more important than anything you'll find at the bottom of a prescription bottle. It's the most powerful thing you do to change not only your health, but the health of the planet, the health of our earth and our soils, the health of our water systems, the health of climate. I mean, the most important thing you can do to regulate climate change is to decide what you put on your fork every day and eat more plant-based foods and less animal foods, eat only sustainably raised foods. It takes, for example, 2,000 gallons of water just to raise one pound of meat. And it takes 53 times more methane gas is produced for 1 pound of meat, for example, than 1 pound of vegetables. And by eating food that regulates our genes, we actually can have a powerful improvement in gene expression. Now, most people are still thinking about the idea of calories all being the same. It's all about calories, energy balance. This is what our government tells us. This is what all our university institutions tell us, all the large associations tell us, American Dietetic Association. It's all about calories. If you just eat less and exercise more, you lose weight. How's that working for y'all? Not too good, right? So the reason is that all calories are not the same. Now, if I was in the 6th grade class and I showed you this picture, I said, 1,000 calories of soda and 1,000 calories of broccoli, are they the same thing? Now, most scientists and nutritionists and doctors would say, absolutely, they're the same thing. It's Newton's first law of thermodynamics. Who are you to say that's not true? I'm saying to you it's not true. In a biological system, it's not true. In physics, yes, it's true. If you take them to a lab and you burn them, the same amount of energy is released. But when you put it in your body, they have very different effects. For example, one 20-ounce soda has 15 teaspoons of sugar, 240 calories. One equivalent amount of broccoli is 7.5 cups of broccoli, no sugar, 35 grams of fiber, lots of phytonutrients. Very different effect. The soda will raise your blood sugar and insulin levels, cause fatty liver, raise your triglycerides, raise your cholesterol, and lower your HDL. It'll cause inflammation, shrink your brain, affect your hormones, have huge impact on your biology. Whereas the broccoli will do the exact opposite. It will balance your blood sugar, it will reduce aging, and everything that happens from eating a phytonutrient and nutrient-rich, high-fiber food. Same calories, very different effect. So how does food influence human biology? There are a few ways, and it's really the components of food you have to understand. So there's components, and then there's real food. So actually, getting back to the simplicity of this, it's very simple. You just eat real food, made from real ingredients, made by you, or a human nearby you, hopefully grown nearby you. That's it. If you just do that, and the nearby you, grown nearby you is harder, but if you can, that's ideal. And that simple notion can really change the world. It can change not only your health, but everything that happens in the world. So calories are not the same, but we have to understand there's variations in the quality of the food we eat. Protein, fats, and carbs are not all the same. For example, kangaroo meat and feedlot beef are not the same. Wild fish, different than farm fish. Various kinds of sugars are different, and so on. We want a diet rich in micronutrients, a diet rich in phytonutrients, we'll talk about in a moment, and a diet rich in fiber. And we want to eat foods that are talking to our genes in the right way. And we don't want to eat any anti-nutrients, which we're going to go through quickly. So how does food influence health? And I wish I had a whole week to talk to you about this. In fact, we teach a 200-hour course on food as medicine, looking at how food influences our biology through our genes, through our enzymes, through cell communication, through our hormonal system, through our immune system, through detoxification, how our body gets rid of garbage, how it affects our gut flora. I mean, you have 500 species in your gut of bacteria. You have 10 times as many bacterial cells, 100 times as much bacterial DNA. You're only 10% human. You have 20,000 genes, an earthworm has 90,000, but you work with the genes of the microbiome that live inside of you. We're actually studying this now, and it's fascinating to learn how powerful this is in controlling health. But guess what? The bugs in your gut only get to eat what you put in there and feed them. If you're feeding them junk, you're growing the wrong bugs. So what should we not eat? We should not eat frankenfoods, factory-made science projects, things that aren't really food. It's not that hard. If it came in a box, a package, a can, if it has a label, it's probably not good for you. And these foods have very harmful components, including a lot of what we call anti-nutrients. They're trans fats, high fructose corn syrup. But if you just do 3 things, if everybody who's listening today just does 3 things for their diet, they will change dramatically their health. One is no trans fats ever, no how, no way. Hydrogenated is the word you look for on the label. No high fructose corn syrup. Not that it's so much worse for you than regular sugar, but it's a sign of really bad quality food. And 3, no MSG, and you have to learn every secret hidden name for MSG, so look it up on the web. Because it's hidden, and it's very dangerous because it makes you spike your insulin, and it makes you binge and crave, and very hungry. In fact, how they get rats to be fat, when they study them, they give them MSG and they overeat and binge. And it's in all sorts of hidden foods. So sugar is the next boogeyman, besides frankenfoods. Now, sugar is a natural food. You can get honey and maple syrup, but we never ate this much. I mean, we were hunter-gatherers. We had 22 teaspoons of sugar a year. Now the average American has 22 teaspoons a day, and the average kid has about 34 teaspoons. That's more than 2 20-ounce sodas a day of sugar. 140 pounds of sugar per person per year. 15% of our calories come from soda. The single biggest source of calories in our diet is high fructose corn syrup. That's frightening. So if you have a desire to stop sugar, can you just do that, right? If you want to just stop those cravings, can you use willpower? Well, let me ask you this. If I told you to go at home tonight and go under the bathtub, or if you don't have a bathtub in New York City, just stick your face in the sink and hold your breath for 20 minutes. Could you do it? Probably not, right? Even if I gave you $10 million, you probably couldn't do it. Why? Because you crave oxygen. Our bodies and our brains crave sugar in exactly the same way. It's regulated by the same ancient primitive part of our brain that drives our survival. So if you actually look at the science of food addiction, and my next book is coming out next March on food addiction, talking about the science of how your brain gets hooked into these high-density, sugar-concentrated foods we eat. And sugar is 8 times more addictive than cocaine. So you want to avoid liquid sugar calories. These are the worst possible things you can eat, and they're in everything, and you should just be aware of those. Diet soda is not the answer. If you drink diet soda, you actually increase your weight, increase your risk of diabetes. It's 100 times sweeter than regular sugar. It alters your taste buds. It alters your brain chemistry. It's incredibly harmful. Diet Coke Plus, what do you think of that? With vitamins and minerals, is that a good idea? I don't know about that. Do they think we're this stupid? I wonder. Maybe they do. What about flour? We eat 140 pounds of sugar, but we also eat 133 pounds of flour. And it's in everything. And flour acts just like sugar in the body. In fact, the new dwarf wheat, it raises your blood sugar more than regular sugar. 2 slices of whole wheat bread will raise your blood sugar more than 2 tablespoons of table sugar. So that's what we should not eat. What about what we should eat? We should eat real food. Eat from the right plant. Don't eat food that was made in a plant. Eat food that was grown in a plant, right? Avocados don't have a barcode. If stuff comes from a garden, it's real food. It's just food. It's just food. Phytonutrients are also important to know about, and you have to understand that most of our domesticated varieties of food are not rich in phytonutrients. So, for example, domesticated corn has dramatically fewer phytonutrients. For example, almost 50 to 100 times less phytonutrients than our more original blue corn. And the same thing with every kind of vegetable. I encourage you to read this article in the New York Times from a few weeks ago, looking at, crab apples versus normal apples, looking at blueberries that we have versus wild blueberries. Very different levels of concentrated phytonutrients, these chemicals that are incredibly helpful to our health, that help our bodies work properly. So next is to get an oil change. You want the right fats. Most of your body is made up of good quality fats, or it should be. Every cell membrane, you've got 100 trillion cells. Most of your brain, 60% of your brain, is made up of the right fat. It should be fish oil, mostly, DHA. And if it's not, you can't think properly, you get depressed, you have ADD, you can get dementia, and it has a huge impact on your health. So you want to eat the right fats, and you want to eat the right types of protein. And protein, particularly in the morning, is very important, because if you eat protein in the morning, it helps regulate your blood sugar for the whole day. It resets your brain chemistry, so you're not craving the whole day, and helps you lose weight. And in my cookbook, I have lots of great protein breakfast recipes. Supplements, a good basic multivitamin, fish oil, and vitamin D will do the trick for most people, and most of us need nutrients. What do vitamins and minerals do? They're not just there to make expensive urine, right? They're there to help catalyze chemical reactions, every single reaction in your body. So what about exercise? Should you exercise? Well, it's a good idea. That's my music to stop, so I'm going to wrap up in 2 seconds. Exercise is important, but you cannot exercise your way out of a bad diet. If you have one soda, you're going to reduce your, you're going to increase your need for exercise dramatically. You have to walk 4.5 miles to burn off one 20-ounce soda. You have to run 4 miles a day to burn off one supersized meal. You can't exercise your way out of a bad diet. And just lastly, community is a very powerful force, and I just want to quickly go through this, which is the power of our community to transform our behavior. So if you work together in a community, we worked, after I went to Haiti, I learned about this whole idea of peer support, and I met a guy named Rick Warren, who was a powerful pastor in Southern California, and Rick really had this church that was very overweight and had really horrible health issues, and we realized that by using the power of community, we could change his church. So we got 15,000 people to sign up for a health program called the Daniel Plan. They lost 15,000 pounds in a year. They lost 250,000 pounds in a year, which is a lot of weight. And they did it by working together, and many of these people radically transform their lives through the power of social support and connection. We're coming out with a book in September about this and December about this called, well, I wanted to call it The Jewish Doctor's Guide to Christian Wellness, but they didn't go for that. So we're going to call it the Daniel Plan, after Daniel from the Bible who resisted the king's temptation of rich food. So let's all work on this together. Let's change our health, change the world, and do this together. Thank you very much.